when you're trying to juggle so many things, somehow they all happen at once, right? Like if I have a very important presentation at 2 p.m., that is exactly the moment both the kids will have a meltdown, both the nannies will go for lunch, some Amazon parcel delivery guy will show up with 100 questions, someone will be calling, and that's the constant state. It's like, it's not a one-off thing. That seems to just be how my days go. So yeah, I guess agitation, franticness, I don't know the emotion.
Hello listeners, my name is Mridvika and this is Just an Ordinary Mom podcast. I really am just an ordinary mom to twin boys with a high-speed career, and this podcast is to tell the stories of ordinary moms doing extraordinary things. From landing a job in New York that allowed her to be in the presence of executives of Fortune 100 companies, to willingly choosing to work at the intersection of impact, tech and healthcare in a developing economy, she's probably seen it all. Guest on our show today is Rhea Mehta, who I've had the privilege to know through our work together as colleagues at Shortlist. Sharing a seat on the leadership table in a company that at the time had 60% women leadership was definitely a humbling experience that we both cherish. Today, Rhea is growing Navya, a cancer informatics company in India, by leading partnerships, fundraising, building team, and lot more. In the conversation today, she talks about how her liberal and protected upbringing didn't necessarily prevent her from falling into the trap of cultural stigmas and social conditioning around gender roles, where she's often the one responsible for laundry and playdates for kids, whereas her husband is responsible for fixing furniture or other supposedly man-appropriate chores at home. She talks about how she defines success for herself, how she's trying to balance her own startup career with equally demanding career aspirations for her husband, and almost daily questioning why extremely talented women around her had to quit their corporate careers after embracing motherhood. In the episode today, we will uncover how, despite the place of privilege Rhea comes from, where it would be easier to quit work if she ever chose to, she continues to fight for the balance between her own aspirations as a professional, her responsibilities as a mother, while being supportive and equally available partner to her husband. Thank you, Rhea. Thank you for being on my show.
Thanks, friends. I'm happy to be here.
Rhea, I know our growing up years has a lot of impression on what the world around us is like. I want us to get started by you telling me a little bit about your childhood days, your growing up years, where did you grow up, and what were early years for you like?
Sure. So looking back, my childhood was almost idyllic. And I think now that we have kids, we spend a lot more time reflecting on that, thinking about that. And it's only happy memories that come to mind. So I grew up in Bombay, not far from here. Born and raised, went to school in Bombay International. Nuclear family, I have an older brother. My dad is an architect. My mom is now an artist. And she did a number of things while we were growing up. And, it was a very, very liberal, progressive upbringing, very much surrounded by the arts and culture. We spent weekends at the NCPA. We visited the Jangir Art Gallery a lot, went to a lot of art shows that influenced how we traveled, what we did on holidays. So did that, and then, for my 11th and 12th grade, I went to Kodi, which is a boarding school, Kodaikanal International. I think that was a pivotal point for me because that was my first sort of hello real world kind of experience, It was a boarding school. It was not a South Bombay private sort of cloistered school. So that was an eye-opener for me. Did that for 2 years, did the IB there. And then I went to the US to do my college. So I think the transition to the US was easier for me than most of the others who I had coming from Bombay or India because I had that boarding school in the middle.
What's the favorite childhood memory for you?
I don't know that it's one memory. I think, the travel definitely stood out, just the experiences we had. And kids just come to things with that sense of wonder. And I think for me, every time we traveled, be it Alibag or Mahabaleshwar or, Hong Kong or Singapore, it was just that, wow, this is the world out there and it's incredible.
Amazing. Talk to me a little bit about your mother. You said that she's an artist now and she did a number of things as you were growing up, while taking care of you. What is her specialization in the field of art? Does she paint or sing or what?
I don't know if she'd want me to introduce her as an artist, but she does these book sculptures. So it's a really cool, she takes old books and refabricates them to a point where they become a piece of art.
Wow.
And it's all self-taught. It's something she saw in someone's house and picked up. And it's a very unique niche. There's no one doing it. So it gets a lot of attention.
Your parents were definitely liberal and progressive for their times in giving you the quality education and opportunities to excel outside of academics. Despite of having access to all of these opportunities, did you ever feel that gender roles played out unevenly at home where, for example, your mom had to pick up most of the caregiving responsibilities, or you were one of those exceptional households where your dad pitched in as well?
My dad definitely pitched in. I wouldn't say he was uninvolved in parenting. He was very involved. I think the way it played out, it was just a function of who physically there, right? And my dad was at work. He's an architect. He was setting up his business when we were young. So physically, he was just not there as much as my mom. So as a result of that, there's no doubt that she carried more weight in terms of parenting.
And did that influence the worldview of what the women's place in society could look like for when you would grow up in your adulthood?
I'm sure it did. Everything we go through as kids influences who we are as adults. We don't have these structures in place, right? So it's not like I was thinking about it in those ways. But I think even though my mom didn't have a conventional career in the sense she didn't go to work 9 to 5, I don't think I was ever raised to believe that women couldn't or shouldn't or mustn't do that. So it was always assumed I would work, and I don't think we've ever sat down and had a discussion saying, Rhea, will you work when you grow up? It was sort of assumed.
And looking back, if you could give advice to your 16-year-old self as a young girl, do you have that wisdom that you would want to pass on to your younger self?
Gosh, yeah, I'd say a lot of things. I think most as a 16-year-old, we had just come out of Bombay. I had just gone into Cody, was just going into college. And I think, like I said, that's when I came out of my sheltered Bombay upbringing. And
any memory that you want to share which put you out of your comfort zone, obviously because you stepped out for the first time from home. Was it an all-girls school or was it a co-ed?
It was co-ed and it was international. So lots of exposure. Lots of memories. I think the eye-opening ones were just meeting kids whose parents were going through a divorce, right? And if you think about it, going through 16 years of life without having experienced that is a great privilege, right? And I had that. I don't know if I want to call it a privilege. I don't want to, sound like divorce is a bad thing. So just to be exposed to those kinds of different families, households was an eye-opener.
Let's shift gears and tell me a little bit about your career journey, what kind of education degree that you decided to pursue. Did you have an idea of what that degree would lead to after college?
So I did my undergraduate in business administration. I don't know why I was in a hurry. In hindsight, maybe I should have done a liberal arts thing and then a master's in business, but I was determined to do a business school. So I went to North Carolina, Chapel Hill, which is a good undergraduate business degree. I started my career in strategy consulting. So I worked with the Deloitte healthcare practice in Manhattan, which was fabulous because in my early 20s, I'm in the boardrooms at the Mercks, Pfizer's, Johnson's & Johnson's of the world, helping make decisions, rubbing shoulders with these executives. Being 20, living in Manhattan, it was just fabulous. Did that for a couple of years and then I realized I'm doing healthcare. I really liked healthcare. I started right from my college thesis on outsourcing healthcare delivery. And I thought if I'm doing healthcare, I really want to do it to have some kind of social impact. So I started doing a little of these, pro bono kind of projects, not-profit organizations that Deloitte could consult with. And I realized that's just scratching the surface. So at, about 3 years in, I decided to just make the move and say, if I'm doing healthcare, I want to do it with a social impact and I want to impact the people at home. So I moved back to India, did a series socially focused startups. So one was an app that connected doctors in metropolitan areas to, poor people from peri-urban or rural areas. The other was a textile that prevented the spread of infection. Of course, now in a post-COVID world, that's a multi-100 million euro company. And let's just say luck and timing were not on my side for that one. And then, I realized I am a generalist because strategy consulting requires you to be a generalist. Working at startups requires you to be a generalist. And then I started thinking about ways I can specialize as a generalist. And I think, this primary care app, I realized that product management was a space. I think it was a very nascent role. I think it still is. Now it's being formalized a little more, but at then, it was like self-discovery on, am I a product manager? Because that's what I'm doing. And then I had the opportunity to come to Shortlist, where we had a great product team, a great tech team. And it was my first pivot outside of healthcare. So Shortlist, does AI-based recruitment. And It was something I was on the fence about a lot because I had never done, you probably remember this from our earlier conversations, a non-healthcare stint. But it seemed like a good opportunity to learn or get the ropes on this product management kind of career. So I did that for a while, and then I realized, no, my heart is really in healthcare and I have to go back. And that's what led me to Navya, the company I'm at currently.
So tell me a little bit about what's your role at Navya Health and what do you do?
So Navya is a cancer informatics company. We use artificial intelligence to help cancer patients understand their best course of treatment, right? And it's coming from the premise that India just doesn't have enough expert oncologists, and to treat a cancer, you need a multitude of data points. And that's a sweet spot for technology to play, because you can now leverage technology to do, in addition to what human doctors can do, to do that better and then still put the case in front of a doctor. I mean, that may be the hardest question, what I do at Navya. I don't know that there's an easy answer, but it's a number of things. If I had to put it in a line, it's probably just helping scale the company in India. Partnerships, new business opportunities, growing the team, growing the channels.
So how does Navya reach people, right? Like, is there an app that they can download and register themselves to get more information about their case?
So there's a couple of channels by which we reach, right? If you look at the Navya business model, it's truly a social impact model, which is what I love about it and why I'm so happy to go to work every day. We treat a large portion of low-income patients. And if you think about it, that makes sense because the use of technology is to be able to scale access. And the ultimate utility is to get it to people who cannot sit in front of an expert oncologist or cannot travel into Tata Memorial to meet an oncologist in person. So there's a huge part of our business that's sponsored by external CSR funders and helps low-income patients. The paying patients, then there's a large portion that come from abroad. So in the US, we're tied up with Memorial Sloan Kettering, Access Hope, and we're working on a number of other partnerships that bring in paid international patients. And then in India, we do ads, just promoting Navya.care for a second opinion, for an expert treatment decision plan, as well as partnerships with hospitals, insurers, things like that.
Very, very inspiring work, Rhea. I also want you to tell our listeners a little bit about the role of a product person, whether they want to start as early as a product manager and then see their way all the way up to chief product officers in a tech startup. Because you said that you intentionally spent some years figuring out if you wanted to specialize in that direction or not.
So product managers is now coming together as a vertical. But what it is, it's essentially the people who are responsible for putting out these user-facing products, like a delivery app or a car booking app or whatever that may be. There's someone behind it who's sitting at the intersection of the technology, just the people who write the code, the user in terms of what does the user need, what is the easiest flow for the user to navigate, and the business, like now how does this clicking here make money for us, or how does this feature make money for us? So like I said, it's almost this generalist role, like it's a mini CEO, because you have to understand all three of these aspects and then bring them together to develop something. So I don't actually, with Navya, I'm not in a clear product role. So what I'm doing for that, I mentor part of the Stanford Graduate School of Business does this executive education program for design thinking. So it's executives who are in the product field or tech field, and they, sign up to learn about design thinking as a way to focus on users. And I mentor a few of those cohorts. So that helps keep me in touch with the product side of things.
That's amazing. I want to now shift gears and talk to you a little bit about your kids, your family. But let's start with the partner you chose to be with. Hormoz is a lawyer and doesn't really come from the same field as yours. How easy or difficult it is for him to understand the importance of the work that you do and how involved he is in you taking the different career decisions and career paths you have over the years?
I don't know how easy or difficult it is for him to understand. I'll give you the answer I give when I'm asked at dinner parties and socially. I think Hormoz is an exceptional dad when he's around. So he has no qualms changing diapers, cleaning up dirty food, giving them baths, whatever it may be. But the fact of the matter is he's a corporate lawyer and he's just not around that much.
And so with his travel schedule and equally demanding careers that you both have, how do you typically divide the labor of bringing up children at home, and how does that play out for you guys?
That's something we think and talk about a lot, right? Because now we're in it. So earlier, through our growing up years or through teenage years, you're always reading about equality and gender roles and all this. And you're like, okay, it makes sense, but you can't relate to it the way I can now. And I think what's happening is there's definitely an equal distribution but it's not equal in all the realms. And what I mean by that is we are not working equally. We are not splitting children's responsibilities equally. As a marriage, yes, we're both bringing everything we have to the table. But I don't know how it's been for you, but I think with us, I find myself just falling into some of these, cultural stigmas where if there's laundry to be done, it's me. If there's a chair to be fixed, it's him. And it's things that or at least I always thought I was above, so to speak, like this wouldn't be the case, but it's sort of just happening.
Yeah, no, I think I'm in no different place than you. Like whenever it comes to who has to get the car fixed, it's automatically, okay, Nishant, can you give the call to the mechanic? And whenever it's like the kids need books or the kids have a play date to be organized, it somehow falls on my plate. And I think, I don't know if it is our social conditioning or if it is our own need to take control of everything that's related to kids that leads us to that. But it's interesting to see like even women who have had equal opportunities growing up in completely liberal families do find themselves on some level thinking about things like these. So
yeah, and I don't know why that is, and that's my thing, right? I don't need someone to take them to brunch on Sunday. Like, I would love to take them to brunch and feed them pancakes. I need someone at 11 a.m. on a Monday when they have a play date and I have a call and someone to just figure that more mundane stuff out.
Yeah, no, I think sometimes this menial and thankless and not registered stuff goes unnoticed. And I think my problem is with that, right? Like, a lot of this work is real work and it just goes unappreciated at times. Tell me a little bit about your kids. How old are they now? And at what stage in your career were you in when you decided to first have them?
So Elena's 4. You probably remember her as a 1 or 2 year old, which is when you met her last. And Zasha will be 2 in August.
Got it.
So they're young. What stage was I in? I was about a year into shortlist with you. I don't think it was a time-based decision. I think we were more or less ready. It's not like we had planned it by the time, but I can tell you what I was going through at the time because I started that job as a consultancy. It's not healthcare. I don't know. Let me start doing it, a couple of hours a week, see how it goes. And then I just moved to full-time, right? Saying I enjoy this, there's product potential, let me do this. And that's when I got pregnant. And that's also roundabout when the maternity law changed to be 6 months of paid leave. So even though I was rightfully entitled to everything in terms of leave and company support, I just had constant feeling of like pressure and almost guilt saying, okay, it's a small startup. I've taken on a bigger role. How can I now get out of the game for 6 months?
Yeah, no, I think it must have been hard. And did you have some of those self-doubts whether you'd come back or whether you probably would want to take a longer extended break to be with your little one?
I did think about it. And I think, again, it came back to the company I was at and the situation. So I often think if I was in a big company with hundreds of thousands of people and some percent of them went on maternity and didn't come back, fine. Like, I'd say, okay, guys, thanks for the maternity. Now I'm done. I think given that it was a startup, small team, I did feel like I had to come back and make up for lost time or at least carry forward what I had started.
And then you had your second one 2.5, 3 years later after the first one was born. You had already gone back to work by then. Did you ever feel that doing it all over again could mean that you had to slow down a little bit again in a smaller impact startup?
Yes. Yeah. Well, you had both of yours at once. So I guess that's the silver lining you didn't have to face. I absolutely did. It was like history repeating itself, saying I'm in the same situation again. It didn't make me question my decision to have a second. I knew I was going to do that. I think I just managed it slightly differently in terms of the logistics of that agreement and things. I had Zasha when I was at Navya and I was early into it, but I did have the liberty to not go back because, again, I just came in as a consultant. I went off. But I think what happened then is now COVID had set in. This was like August 2020. So we were like deep into COVID. And what happened is digital health just took off. Everything, was digital health. And I have invested so much of my career in this game that I didn't want to be sitting on the sidelines when that happened. So I made myself go back and I'm happy about it. I'm glad I did, but that's sort of the decision-making process I went through.
No, I'm sure even the employers you are at right now would have helped you ease back into the work routine again. And COVID only helped because you were physically at least at home. But tell me about how did the diaper changes to night shifts to everything that had to be done all by yourself during lockdown? Did it take a toll on you physically while, the boundaries between home and work were blurring?
It was tough, and COVID's been tough for everyone in so many different ways. I think it was definitely tough to manage both. In a lot of ways, it was almost easier because life was just kids and work, right? And in that sense, I'm glad I was working because at least I had something other than diapers to think about. But I think not having or not feeling like you're missing out on a social life or travel or meeting friends because none of that was happening anyway, I think in that sense, it was a lot easier.
Yeah, I know from my own example, raising a child takes a village. What's your support system and village like, Rhea?
My support system is great, and that's the only reason I can do, Navya and the Stanford mentoring and everything else I choose to do. My mom is very involved, both my parents, but my mom on weekdays, and Hormaz is involved when he's available. And I have 2 full-time nannies, which makes all the difference in the world.
Can you share any of the funniest mistakes that you may have made as a mother, either with the first one or the second one?
Oh God. Well, I've enrolled them in a lot of things that I've then forgotten about or not shown up on time to take them. Yeah, through lockdown. So I don't know if it's a mistake. It was a shocker for me, but through lockdown, there was a point where my husband and all my staff had COVID and the kids were very young. Like Zasha was, I think, 6 or 8 months. She was still feeding. I was still nursing. So it was me and 2 kids living in one room and then me taking care of, 3-6 staff and my husband and in-laws and parents. Everyone around me had COVID. And I was trying to do everything all at once by myself. And I remember once I was folding laundry or something. I came out and I found Zasha with my laptop plugged in to a plug point and the charger in her mouth.
Oh my God.
She was sucking on the charger. And it was like, every expletive in the world. And this was under a table. So I had to crawl under the table, bang my head to pull her out.
Oh my God. It must have been scary.
Yeah.
I hope she was fine after that.
Yes, thankfully.
You're raising 2 girls in times where everything is equally available to regardless of what gender your child is. But how are you role modeling for your girls to help them understand how they can achieve their fullest potential?
Yeah, I think a lot of that just happens by example. Like I saw my parents do things. I don't think they sat down and had these talks with me. So I think that's happening by example, seeing me work. Hormaz is great with that. He'll never say, oh, daddy has work and mom's going to do this. It's always, okay, we have to go to work now or we'll do this together tonight. So there's a lot of that by example. The few things I try to do is these toys. I don't know if you experience it, but these kids' toys are just so hard to assemble. It's like these tiny screws and tiny things and detailed instruction manuals. And a lot of the times I'm just like, okay, let's wait till dad's home. But then I make myself do it. I'm like, no, bring me the screwdriver. I will assemble this for you.
Talking about the gender toys, do you intentionally think about getting them, a mechanic's toy in addition to, getting them access to, let's say, stuffed toys and dolls if they are into that?
We do a bit of that. She's now becoming a little more of a girly girl, but I wouldn't say a tomboy, but she loves all boys' toys equally. She's not so much into dolls. So we definitely encourage that. Hormaz is very sporty and outdoorsy and likes to rough it out. And he's going over the top to make sure our kids can do that, which is fine by me.
Rhea, tell me a little bit about how do you feel when you are comparing your career with your husband's? Like he's a corporate lawyer and has a well-defined career progression, whereas you chose to be in social impact, which has a long winding journey of its own. So talk to me a little bit about how do you feel about your success and how people around you view your success?
Yeah, that's a great question, Mitch, because it's something I think about a lot as well. Because if you look at what I'm doing, it's such a undefined and sort of vague field, right? I'm trying to do social impact. I want to do health tech. I want to do digital product. And these are all new and, it's not a career path. Like you said, Hormaz has a clear, he's a partner at a law firm and the next step is equity partner. And it's a very clear trajectory. So in that sense, I don't think there's scope for comparison at all. But I do question what it would be like if I had just stayed on the consulting path where I went from manager, senior manager, partner. That's it. Think about it. I don't question it because I think what this sort of nuanced, curvy path allows me to do is set my own benchmarks of what I want to achieve. I think as a mother, that's challenging because at a startup, or at least the company I'm in, there's no one saying, okay, sign in at 9 a.m., show me your face at 10 a.m., sign out, right? It's all has to be self-motivated. I'm going to get out of it how much I put in. And that's frustrating because so many times I want to be putting in more. Like, it's not like I'm going to work and just counting the minutes till I can get home to the kids. I want to be putting in more, but I can't because of resource constraints. or because my attention has to be elsewhere.
So how do you define success for yourself? Do you often let others' success weigh you down? I'm sure you have friends who chose to continue staying in traditional corporate careers. They probably have a certain level, a designation, compensation, etc. How have you chosen to define success at your own terms?
So I'm absolutely very comfortable, confident, happy with where I am. I'm happy with the decisions I've taken. But no doubt, I think about what other people are doing. And first of all, I don't have that many other mothers who are on the corporate ladder. I just don't. From my kids' school, there aren't that many. There are lots of working moms, but conventional corporate 12-hour day kind of jobs, very, very few, right? And that says something.
That's the statistic I hope we can see reversed in our lifetimes, or hopefully our kids' lifetimes. I think the problem of leaky bucket and women dropping off the workforce has been a personal pet peeve. And I'm amazed to hear that even in your own close group of mothers that you see, women have chosen to continue working in different ways but not stayed in a career.
Yeah, that's my micro statistic based on my group, but that is what it is. And yeah, I'd love to see that change as well. I think for me, what makes it easy is, so my company is US based. I work with this Stanford program that's also US based. It's a challenge because now I'm on IST, EST, and PST. So it's around the clock sort of working, but it's also great because it gives me the flexibility to be there for school pickup at 12 noon or take the kids to a play date at 4. And to me, that factors in on how I think about success. To be able to be at this point in my career where I've found that equation, where I'm doing the things I'm love, I'm keeping the product side of my career alive through the separate channel, I'm focusing on social impact and health tech through my main job, and I'm able to be there for kids pickup. That to me is success in its own way.
No, thank you so much for sharing that. And I think it just goes on to say your success is your success. And it's absolutely detrimental for you to compare it with anyone else's.
Absolutely.
Rhea, you play many roles as a wife, as a mother, as a daughter-in-law. How do you remove time for yourself? I know work is equally busy and then the rest of it is with kids. But if you had the opportunity, how would you sort of prioritize yourself over playing so many different roles?
Good. I like that you're asking it as a hypothetical so I can tell you my ambitions. I'd like to just remove myself from the situation as best I can. So I work remotely. I work for a company that's based in the US, and one of the things that lets me do is work from anywhere. And I always dream of working at a cafe in Paris or, a coffee shop in London, but somehow that never happens. The dog is sick or the maid is on leave or kid's school is just starting or Hummus has to travel for work. But ideally, I'd like to take this liberty I have to just go somewhere for a week and work, immerse myself in work and treat that as time for myself.
What's your most frequently experienced emotion as a mother or as a woman who's chosen to work outside of home?
There's this constant state of being frantic. I don't know if that counts as an emotion.
But what's that emotion about? Whether the kids would be okay or whether things would be getting done in the way you want them get done? Or
I think things getting done. I guess the emotion would be just agitation. It's when you're trying to juggle so many things, somehow they all happen at once, right? If I have a very important presentation at 2 p.m., that is exactly the moment both the kids will have a meltdown. Both the nannies will go for lunch. Some Amazon parcel delivery guy will show up with 100 questions. Someone will be calling. And that's the constant state. It's not a one-off thing. That seems to just be how my days go. So yeah, I guess agitation, franticness, I don't know the emotion.
Has your relationship with your partner changed, obviously, after the kids came along? Are you able to find time to do couple things, find time for yourself with each other? Are you able to do any of that?
I think that's the other revelation that takes effort, right? Again, if you go back to thinking when we were just married, you're like, no, we won't be those people. We'll always travel and we'll always find adventure. So yeah, we are putting in the effort.
Rhea, what is that one piece of advice that you would give to another woman who wants to have a career while feeling like she has been a reasonably successful mother if she chooses to be one?
I can tell you what's been helpful for me, and hopefully that'll help others. I think just understanding why you want to do what you're doing helps a lot. So for example, if I was just doing a job because I felt like women have to work, or I felt like to represent to my children that I'm working, I should work, I don't think I'd be able to pull it through. So I'm doing a job I love, and it's still challenging just to get it together every day. So I think I'd say, figure out why you want to do what you think you want to do. And if that reason is sound enough, then, find a way to do it, right? And lean in on your village, as you said. There's no way any of us could be doing this alone. So don't hesitate to ask for help.
Have you been able to ask for help naturally?
I have on my immediate, like I said, my parents or Hormas. We've had friends who are raising kids at the same age, and it's incredible how much you can now relate to one another since we're in the same situation. You've always read about how difficult it is for women to manage careers, manage kids, till you live it, and then you're like, oh my God, this is what the conversation has been about.
That's amazing. Thank you so much, Rhea, for taking the time to be on the show. And that was the episode of Just an Ordinary Mom podcast. If you are an ordinary mom or know someone who could benefit from listening to this podcast, do share it with them. This podcast was recorded at Manic Pod Studios in Chembur, Mumbai. Our sound engineer is Shrey Tiwari and our producer is Vedant Nayak. Thank you for listening.